Everybody, my name is Chris Levine. I'm one of the principal owners of Employer Solutions Group, also known as Employer Solutions Staffing Group. We're located in Edina, Minnesota. We've been in business since 2005, so that's 18 years of doing this. And I'd like to thank Bill Kale and Barb Saadi, both partners at Boyum, for allowing us to do this presentation today. I think it's a great time for us to be talking about staffing needs, staffing challenges in 2003. A lot of you are currently going through your budgeting process. You're looking at employment trends. You're looking at how HR is going to be involved with the new norm that's going on. So I think we're going to be talking a little bit about, when we talk about new norm, what that means, and about the Great Recession that a lot of people have talked about, or resignation, excuse me, and quiet quitting. But to start off, let me tell you a little bit more about our company. And if Nathan, if you want to jump in, we can go to the next slide. And Nick, you were going to kind of kick it off too, so maybe you wanted to throw something in there as well.
No, you covered most of it very well. I just want to say at the very bottom, well, depending on what you're using for Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A button where if you have any questions, please pop them in there. And if it's a good one to interrupt, we might jump in and ask Chris and Nathan right on the spot. Otherwise, we have saved a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A, so please drop those in as they come up. Otherwise, Chris, you did a great intro. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're located in Edina. We have about 100 to 120 employees that manage employees in work sites across the U.S. So we have work in all states. And we also work in Puerto Rico. We work in Hawaii. We also do federal waterway work as well too. And so with that, from the time we started with 0 employees to where we're at today, prior to COVID, we were paying roughly around 20,000 people on a weekly basis. Today, our numbers are dropped, and probably you as well as us are having a rough time finding workforce. And that's kind of why this conversation is happening today, to kind of help you better understand what we can do to help with your profitability, help with your efficiencies, to strengthen your P&L when it comes to having employees, to maybe reinvest in them from salary or benefits or other items. Our company handles things from insurance, unemployment, employee benefits. We handle HR items, legal support. We do all payroll taxes, payroll filings. We also provide an interesting way of providing capital through invoice funding, and it's not a factoring relationship. So ESSG is really focused on employees and working with you to be more effective and efficient when having and retaining employees. ESG takes on a lot of the risk associated with those employees, and in most cases is the W-2 employer. So that's who we are. And I think a lot of things that I wanted to bring up right away, I should kind of talk a little bit more about what we're seeing for 2023. I think you are probably wondering what kind of recession we're having, how is inflation happening? So wanted to bring up a couple items. For Minnesota unemployment rate, and you guys are mostly, I believe, in Minnesota, the current rate for as of November, the unemployment rate is 2.3%. I remember in the summertime last year, it was as low as 1.8, but in the last couple months, it started to come back up to 2.3. The current U.S. unemployment rate is at 3.7. There used to be a kind of a common theme that we would always say in our office or with our recruiter groups, is that anybody that if unemployment was less than 3%, that's probably the population we don't want to hire, but that's the population we do have to hire. And so we have to figure out how we're going to retain them and provide benefits and other things to that group and get them into the workforce. There's 3 areas that we saw that were the most decreasing amount of employees leaving the workforce. And Nathan's going to get into about, people that were going to exit the workforce anyway. They were, baby boomers, they were getting out. A lot of people just felt that COVID, working at an office or complex, they just didn't want to do that anymore. And Nathan probably has another one that he can share with you. But I think the unemployment rate, based on what I'm seeing, is going to come up. It's going to probably end up with the federal government staying somewhere between 4.5 to 5.5. And that's going to come through layoffs in the first and second quarter as we go through the recession, if that truly happens. But third and fourth quarter, we're going to see an increase in demand. I think we're going to end up seeing more people go from going back into the workforce at that period of time because they need to find a job. But then all of a sudden we're going to have unemployment rate happening again. So I would expect 23 to be, interesting throughout the year. And so our conversations we're having hopefully will help you guide you through your hiring needs and what we can do for 23. So I guess the other thing is, we talked about, well, at least I did mention Great Resignation, and it was kind of baffling at the time. Internally in our office, we did see people leave, and what they moved for was having a remote work environment, which we were offering, but they wanted to make sure that was part of their hiring agreement. They also wanted to have an increase in pay, and it gave them an opportunity to find employers willing to pay for them at another location. I have not seen that much turnover currently in our office now. I think it's kind of plateauing, but it is still pretty prominent in the marketplace, and that is the primary reason employees are leaving employers, is just for better pay. Next slide, Nathan can jump in there.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's great information. A lot of the information that we gain is from our clients and what they see. About 75% of our clients are staffing agencies throughout the country. So staffing in general, what I've seen, I've been in staffing since 2003, and typically staffing is a good barometer of the market. When the barometer is going up, when the economy is going up, staffing is they're the first industry that sees an increase in revenue. On the downside, when recessions hit, they're the first ones to experience a decrease. Now, we haven't seen a huge decrease just because, as Chris mentioned, employees are hard to find right now. One statistic that I've seen over the last couple of years that has affected the lack of employees available is that visas hadn't been issued for 2020 and 2021. Numbers just came in for 2022, and there's a 73% increase in visas issued from 2021 to 2022. So that there's more labor in the market now, which is helping employees get product out the door. Unemployment is still very, very low, as Chris mentioned. There's always that 3% that I've been taught over the years to look at. If it's at 3% or lower, you're not hiring great people. And thanks for using that statistic before I could say it, Chris. That really helps. Baby boomers were a big part of that decrease that not a whole lot of people knew or are talking about. In the 2.5, almost 3 years since COVID hit, there was a 6% decrease of workers over the age of 55 that were working. Now, as of late 2022, only 33% of workers over the age of 55 are working. And that's the smallest amount that since they've been keeping statistics that they've seen. So baby boomers are out. Who's coming in to fill those jobs? Well, there's not a 6% increase in the labor market coming in, especially when visas weren't being issued. So that's why we're seeing the unemployment being low. Another thing that we're seeing from our staffing companies is, how do you attract employees? Technology is key. If you make the employee work too much to get hired, they will simply abandon the job or not go to the job. So technology is key. With that being said, everything needs to be digital. They're all on their phones all the time. If you can have a platform that they can get hired and fill out their W-2 and I-9 and do that all on their phone, they're going to come to work for you. Also, they're looking at the dollar sign, especially for remote workers, where culture might not be what they're looking for anymore. Typically, back in the day, as we say, before COVID, culture was a big part, and we'll be talking about that more later on in the presentation. What is your company culture? That was a common theme during interviews that everyone would ask. Well, now they're asking, what is the wage? And culture is secondary. Culture means, can I work from home? In a lot of the office jobs that we see now, instead of, hey, what do you do to increase employee engagement at the office? We're also seeing an increase in outsourcing of employees. So companies like ours become employer of record. We're seeing that become an increased trend. Part of that is with the remote workforce. we're licensed to be an employer in all 50 states. If an employer has operated in Iowa for 57 years and now has an employee in Nevada that they hired remotely, they can go to us and we become the W-2 employer for those employees. So that's some of the trends that we've seen within our office and within our staffing partners that we talk to every day. We're going to talk more about remote work, and I'm going to kind of pass the mic back to Chris here virtually.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Kind of adding on to what Nathan said, the resignation, that we're seeing most highest is in healthcare technology. We're also seeing applicants more in that area. I think anybody in their mid-career stage is also looking at different places to go to work. With remote working, as Nathan was talking about, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think a new employee application of asking them if they wanted to take a hybrid or remote work assignment is different than having them in the office. There's things pertaining to security that's important. Cyber and security insurance is outrageously expensive now. You need multi-factored I can't even say it often.
Dual factor authentication.
MFA. But you need 2 devices to verify. You guys are probably doing that, with your going to a stock platform or going to your banking account, but we require all employees to do that as well too. And also you need to probably have a Microsoft 365 Defender or 365 Office email system to prevent any phishing emails, and also look at that. Cyber insurance is really expensive. You don't want to have ransomware issues come in, lock you down. What are you doing to protect yourself? What is your backup plan? I think that's really important in today. And with that, with remote workers, you need to really make sure that you are secure when you do this. I think it's a great opportunity to address the rural areas in which you could potentially hire from. If the infrastructure is there, which is happening now, we have employees out right now that are running fiber optic lines to areas in the remote area to increase the ability to provide that. And so a lot of people came to the city to work. Maybe they're going back home to work now, and you potentially could utilize that workforce there remotely if you have the ability to do that and at a lower cost. So I think the takeaway with remote work is making sure you have a good agreement with your employees, setting out what that means about utilizing technology correctly, making sure that you have productivity measured, you can evaluate your employees correctly with that, and that you have these security things in place to make sure it works well. And yes, we can work with anybody in any state. If you do have a need to hire somebody without getting all set up, we can step in and be the employer for you in that particular state for those employees. Nathan, back to you.
Yeah, sounds good, Chris. And what have you seen as far as a percentage increase in cybersecurity? I didn't ask you to prepare for that, but is it 300%, 500%?
Yeah, it's if you don't have, you might not be able to get it if you don't have multi-faceted, often.
Multi-factor authentication.
It's the toughest word for me today, but MFA with the 2 device verification. I would say 3 to 4 years ago, it wasn't that bad, but it has gone up 8, 9 times what it used to be. And a lot of companies just chose not to get it. But I think now it's probably required, or what your clients are requiring you to have it. So I think it would be really important to have.
Yeah, I remember in 2017 at the company I used to run, they came to me and talked about cybersecurity insurance and ransomware, and I said I don't know what that is, and why do I need to spend an extra $10,000 a year? Well, now that's $100,000 a year. So
and it's based on your size, and you should use your insurance agency to go ahead and do an evaluation of your company, look at potential security risks and issues. They're going to be taking your policy to market, and if they have a good understanding of what's going on within your company, they're going to be able to get that coverage for you a lot easier. But the applications are a lot longer, and that is the new norm. No one wants to be able to have an issue at their office without having a backup plan. So I think it's really important to have a backup plan as well too.
And Joan just popped in with a question, and she's in Princeton, New Jersey. Is there a platform that you recommend for digital onboarding? Well, I am in sales, so I would say the ESSG system would be the system that I would promote. But there are a multitude of systems out there, and just make sure that it has been tested and that is compliant for remote hiring through the IRS and INS, so that the employee tax documents are correct and they pass the IRS muster. So if you ever do get an audit, that you will pass that audit. So those are some questions that you'll want to ask when evaluating digital onboarding, or you come and talk to ESSG. But if you have anything else, John, feel free.
Over the years, what we've done, you get into the I-9 aspect of it, and there's some unique things about that. We used to have to look at the 2 documents. We'd have from that employee sign them right there and say, you can go ahead and do that. During COVID, there was changes pertaining to that. You can actually have your friend or somebody else be that person signing off that said those are the documents and they can go to work. So there's some definite changes in the I-9 process. Should you keep the documents? Should you not keep the documents? That's up to you and what you want to do. But there's definitely more flexibility with the I-9 process. But the whole onboarding process, from applications to having your employee handbook there, maybe policies and procedures, all within a digital platform, would be very useful to have.
Yeah, we were lucky to have that in place right before COVID. So that was an easy flip the switch instead of scrambling as many people were. I'm going to kind of get into attracting and retaining talent and what we've seen in our experience over the last 18 years, but more specifically over the last 3 or 4 years. One thing that we've been able to take advantage of is hiring remote workers. It's hard to find people within our industry, and Minnesota has always been a tight labor market. So now we have the ability to hire people with experience that live anywhere. I've got outside salespeople that none of them live in the same state. A lot of them are in the Southeast where it is cheaper to live. And I've also had ones in California that it's more expensive to live, but they can work from home. They come here to Minneapolis in the summertime. Nobody wants to come here in February for some reason. They want to stay in Florida, but that's their prerogative. But once you've attracted that talent and found talent across the country, how do you retain the talent? That's the thing that has gotten harder, and something we want to just give a few tips. Do we have every answer? No. But we kind of hinted at it earlier, but company culture has become more individualized from our experience. It's not every Friday we have a birthday cake for anybody that had a birthday that month, or every 3rd Friday, we have a spaghetti dinner. That has become less important for a remote workforce, but you've got to identify that with each individual. What is it that motivates them? We have some people that are process payroll and they do it at 10 o'clock at night and they do a great job at it. That allows them to take care of kids, do whatever else they have in their life, and that's all they want. Other people want to come to the office 5 days a week, and that's great. We allow for that. But it needs to be an individualized. Where we've seen companies, I don't want to say fail, but lose employees is broad stroke measures, saying here's what every employee needs to do, and if you don't, you'll be fired. We need to be more individualized. Obviously, money is becoming more important. I think everyone on this call can attest to wages rising. We've got a customer right now in Atlanta, and they put small things in small boxes, very menial work, but they're paying $15 an hour and can't find anybody. $15 10 years ago used to be a great wage, but now they're getting pushed to pay $18 an hour for a very simple job. So looking at where your turnover is, and is money going to help that turnover, or is environment going to help that turnover? That's something to keep in mind. Defining your new mission statement. When is the last time you looked at your mission statement? Was it over 4 years ago? Well, look at it again now. Is that really the same mission that your company has that it had 4 years ago? And is there a need for the company culture? What is the overall need? What is the individual need? So I think that's one thing that I kind of want to hammer home is individualizing your company culture is going to help you maintain better mental health for your employees and retain those employees. Mental health is kind of the next topic we're going to get into. People that have started working remotely, we've seen a lot of them, not even within our company, but externally and internally, have new issues that we didn't have to see before. If you saw, Jack or Jill come in every Monday, you knew if they might be having issues. You saw if, hey, they stopped cutting their hair, they're looking a little long in the face, so to speak. But now, if they turn their camera off on a Zoom call, you don't know what they look like anymore. So really having a system to check in with employees, see how they're doing, and setting metrics for them, for their productivity at work, to see, well, this person hasn't checked their email in 3 days. Just some basic metrics like that can tell you a lot. Maybe you need to check in with this person because they haven't been checking their email, and they used to check their email, 80 times an hour. Also, visibility to leadership is an important way to make people increase your culture, but also increase mental health. One thing within our company that has helped a lot is our ownership team has been visible throughout the pandemic, just as they were before, walking down the hallway. But video messages out to people, having calls with different teams, and being on those calls, even if it might not be, say Chris is not that involved with the accounting group, but jumping on a call to see how all of them are doing, say, hey, I'm here to help, I care about you. But apart from that is using the tools you already have. If your health insurance has an employee assistance program, an EAP, make sure that's highlighted, and whether it's a monthly company newsletter, emails to employees, if there's annual or monthly reviews with employees. Hey, did you know that there's this EAP program? If you have any issues, it's absolutely confidential. Call this number and they will get you whatever you need, and I will never even know about it. One thing that I've seen a lot of is just increasing physical activity for employees who may be working remote is very important, because they might be sitting at home and then they go to the kitchen to eat lunch, and then they come back to the office, and that's the extent of their physical activity. So there's also some wellness programs that many health insurance companies have within the systems that you already probably are paying for that highlight wellness. And this can also build culture, like we talked about before, is having contests, who can get the most steps in a month. There's some ADA, American with Disability Act, things to keep in mind there, just from HR guy. If people can't walk, we can't require them to do steps, but there are programs out there that can encourage physical activity, and also using PTO. And I struggle with this, just as many employees do. It's like, well, I'm working from home, you need to use my PTO. And so we've seen our bank of PTO just go up exponentially over the last 2 years. And so telling people, take a week off and get out of your house, take a week off, go somewhere nice. It's hard to tell somebody to not work, but I think that's an important part of increasing mental health in a remote workforce. So I'm going to pass it back to Chris. He's going to kind of talk more about some wage and hour things that we've been seeing over the last few years.
I think back to the mental health thing, I think a lot of people can take advantage of saying that they have mental health issues to get an environment that will allow them to work at home remotely. So words like, I'm not safe coming into the office. I've seen that. I've seen other things. So make sure to talk with HR, get legal involved if you have some potential issues. The EEOC is definitely looking and watching and seeing what's going on with employers with this whole change. But there's a lot of strength for the employers, but employees are really pushing the envelope with this ability to work from home. Going to salary and dumping into hourly work, because when somebody's at home and you're used to paying them hourly, you might have to change on how you do that, because the time in which they're trying to do this with their balanced life, you might have to go ahead and switch them to salary. So make sure you're following, guidelines pertaining to how to do that. Make sure that you're looking at FLSA. Make sure you're looking at federal and state laws. Make sure that you have a policy in place to define that. You have computer usage, how that looks. We talked about, cyber coverage, making sure that you have a good policy in place and really outlining the expectations and the performance of the employees. But you definitely can move from an hourly to a salary arrangement. Just make sure you follow those lines and make sure that you're offering a different type of job to them, that they're choosing to do remote work and they're choosing to have a hybrid or whatever you're offering. I also think it's important to say, hey, the office is still open. You can come in at any time. You don't have to be at home if you'd like to come in. And so hopefully you can create a culture and environment where you can bring people in, and all of a sudden they might start realizing that after 2 weeks of being at home, in building that habit, that they can get out and maybe they find that the whole thing when it comes to social interaction with others can be back at work. So hopefully you're able to do that and put that in place. I think there's a great benefit in it if it's done correctly. A lot of companies are downsizing their office space to a smaller office space to save on their costs for that space and creating more of an open office space. Cubes are not in anymore, I guess. So more of a flexible work area, having people with laptops instead of desktops, all these kind of things are kind of happening out there. So keep that in mind. I think, to end this whole conversation and move into what we can do and some of the key challenges for 2023 is really, looking at us. If you're thinking about hiring somebody remotely to take a benefit of a rural area, or you have employees that say, hey, I'd really like to be able to keep working for your company, but I'd like to move to Arizona. Can you accommodate? Give us a call. Let's see if we can help you out with that whole part of it. We do have the ability to do that. We do that with companies now, so it might be a good fit. Having HR assistance with those kind of items is good. I think everything else that we do, when I mentioned earlier about having insurance coverage for all this part of this aspect, being set up in all the states, having unemployment accounts set up for everywhere, having the employee benefits that you might need to put in place to retain and attract top talent, we have. So that's something good to look at, and it's very customized. You can really set your cost for healthcare at a certain flat dollar amount, not have to worry about healthcare increased costs each year. We have been self-insured our workers' comp. We have done that with healthcare, and we can guide you through a lot of that aspect of it. So you don't have to worry about, the employees working in other areas. If you feel you're comfortable enough in allowing that to happen, we can support you and direct you in how to manage it. Just to finish off this whole piece, I think the key challenges for 23 is making sure you're managing expectations and be flexible and accountable with your employees on those. Being flexible increases work happiness, and it also creates a higher productivity. Employees feel less connected when they're not to work and culture. So you're going to have to work on that and how to bring that together. And then you're going to have to look at how you monitor employees' performance in a remote work environment, and how you do that without intruding on their privacy and their freedom. I've heard people say, well, I'm going to have a computer system that monitors all their keystrokes and see what's going on. I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea. Having a camera on to see that they're at their desk. I think you're really going to have to just lay out that you want this much work done in this allotted time, and looking at it. Maybe you're not sure what they do. So let's get a 2-week log of information of what they've done, so you can customize and fit what's best for their work if you're working remotely. And I think the final thing to take away from this, the norm is gone, in my opinion. I think the 9-to-5 process of people coming into the office is gone. I think you're going to really see people maybe looking at, 4-day work weeks as well too. When I talk to people that work downtown, it's busier on Mondays. Or not on Mondays. It's busier on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Monday and Friday, it's kind of a ghost town downtown. So those are our takeaways. If you have questions and stuff, we got enough time to kind of fill this stuff in. I don't have the answers for everything, but it is the new norm in my opinion. And I do think if you adapt with it and you work with your employees on it, you'll be ready for success for 2023. So questions, anybody got anything?
Yeah, while we give them some time to type in some questions, just wanted to say thank you. And what if we do have follow-up questions, or maybe it's specific and we don't want to throw it out in the chat, what's the best way to talk with you, either you or somebody at ESSG?
Yeah, you could go to Nathan, just his full name, and send him an email at, and Nathan, I'm going to use a shorter email, but it's just capitalize ESSG.us, or you can email me as well at chris@ESSG.us.
Great.
Having everybody write out employersolutionsgroup.com, and it's a little much, but ESSG.com with our first name would be great.
Good job. I like simplification. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And we will give just another 30 seconds or so for anybody to type what they have questions on. Otherwise, happy to end early and give some people a little bit of their time back. Oh, perfect. So the question did come in, and I think it's a good question. And
I
also,
think Nathan's more related to Gen Z age than I am. So
yeah, and even
not
specifically,
quite. The Botox treatments might make me look that way, but
yeah, sure.
thankfully I'm not. Absolutely, we've seen. I mean, this week I saw Gen Z pop its ugly head. So the phone is becoming less used. That's one thing that I've noticed a lot, so adapting to that. Somebody doesn't pick up the phone who's an employee, but you text them and they'll text you right back when you aren't able to get a hold of them. But also training people to use the phone is something that I've found handy, is because they are so used to texting and emailing, and you get an email string that is 15 responses long that could be solved in a 2-minute phone conversation. So training them, my dad had something that he instigated in his office, and he's an engineer, far different from what I do. But on Tuesdays, I believe, if you were in the office, you could not send an email to someone else in the office, and you had to get out of your seat and go and talk to that person face to face. So that's something that I've established too, is you cannot write an email about a simple question unless you're transferring information to someone else on Tuesdays. You have to pick up the phone. So training people to use the phone is something that I've, with some that are younger, and that's some that are older too. It's not just Generation Z. It is something that's become effective for me specifically.
And just to add on to that, how about we flip it to the other end? Do you have any trouble on the other side with older generations? And it's not always them, it could be the younger generations not adapting well to the new environment. Do you have any,
this has been going on for every generation. The newer generation's different than the older generation. Technology has developed so quickly in how we communicate. The older generation, still wants to use the phone. Well, hey, my phone for our company is now on my cell phone, right? It's totally different. They want to print paper. Well, let me tell you, you can store a lot of stuff and cut down on costs. But with the new communication, it's social interaction with others. It's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, they need food, clothing, and shelter, but when you get into the social aspect, they're not filling that block. And so if you can get up a little bit more engaged with that, then they become more aware of who they are and have that upper part of that whole piece of it. And it's really encouraging to talk. They do not like to talk. They want to text. They want to hide in emails. They want to do all their hiring process through that system. So we can accommodate that, but in the same aspects, you got to learn how to and teach them how to communicate outside of the technology, or we are all going to just be pulled into communicating technology wise. And I don't know where things will lead to 20, 30, 50 years from now, but it always compounds faster and faster, and eventually maybe that'll be an old way of communication for all of us. But I don't want to lose it. I still like talking. Well, I
Good.
think that's probably it for questions and stuff. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Nick, thanks again. Thanks for the rest of the team at Boyum, and Nathan, thanks for jumping on. Anybody ever has any questions or stuff, feel free to reach out to Boyum, or if you want to reach out to ESSG, please do. Look forward to working with you if you need some help.
Thank you all. And just the last little plug, this is our Q1 2023 webinar that Boyum is putting on. We will have these quarterly on just different hot topics. Obviously, staffing's probably going to pop up a lot because that is one of the hardest things we've all been going through these past few years. But just keep watching for our emails. They're hopefully very relevant. If you have any ideas, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear what you want to hear topics on. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Nathan. And
Thank you.
have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Everybody.
Bye.